Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm Stretch Professor, and today we're going to be going over the 10.15 patch notes for League of Legends. So as always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out a ton on the channel. Come check out the stream. We stream every night starting around 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Usually go till about 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Very friendly, chill community. I try to talk with the chat as much as possible while also explaining what's going on in the games that I'm playing and some of the decisions that I'm making. I'll leave a link in the upper right here, close to the beginning, if you want to check out some of the past streams. And then come check out a live stream as well. It's great. I do put timestamps as well as a description of the champion that I play in the comments and in the description of all of the past streams. So if you just want to skim around and see, hey, did he play Janna tonight? Did he play Rakan? Did he play whoever your favorite champion is? You can really quick just check it out. And if you just have time to watch like one game, you'll have time to watch the whole thing, then you can just flip through and just see which game you might be most interested in. So check all that out. And I do tier list, patch notes for every patch, and then in-depth champion guides, topical guides. I just did a complete beginner's guide to League of Legends for support. I'll have that linked at the end as one of those end screens, so be sure to go check that out. And then last week, I think I did how to carry a support, and I'm going to do an updated like dodge guide. And I know people have commissioned a Karma guide and potentially a Janna guide upcoming as well. So lots and lots of content on the channel. Be sure to check all that out. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. So as let's see, more flexible ranked flex. Okay, I guess that's better if you like flex or clash. Now Lilia, I'll talk about her just really quickly here. They added some stuff to her when I first previewed her last patch. They left out a very important piece of information in that preview, and that was the stacking movement speed buff. And that was my biggest critique of her, was I didn't understand how she was going to get on people or stick on people. Like what's her thing? This is her thing. She gets up to 55% extra movement speed when she stacks up her Q. So I think that she is going to be quite powerful. I think the skill cap is going to be really high on her. It's somewhere close to like a Singed meets Darius kind of thing. Is the closest. A lot of people compare her to Hecarim as well, but I think her playstyle is going to be much more like a Singed, where you don't really want to charge in and go all the way on top of them with her most of the time. You want to dance around the outside, but just like Hecarim's sort of little circular swing, you want to position yourself so that you're always hitting the outer arc of her swing, so that you get that true damage. So that's like Hecarim, Darius rather. You see good Darius players will also, when they're charging up their Q, they'll step back a little bit so that you hit them with the sweeping arc. I think it's going to be very similar to her. So she's going to be kind of just a pest sort of kiting champion. Aurelian Soul might be another good example of this, where it's all about maintaining a certain level of positioning and zones of control. So I think that stuff like Boots of Swiftness could be good on her, because of that percentage movement speed that'll allow you to reposition. Maybe take Sork Boots on her, I'm not sure. But I think Boots of Swiftness sounds really good to me, because positioning is going to matter so much. And then it's probably just going to be like a Rylai's Liandry's combo. So I think she'll primarily be played in the jungle. It looks like she probably would have good clear. So you'd get Runic Echoes into probably Rylai's, into Liandry's, and then just kind of feel it out from there. But yeah, that's how I think she's most likely going to function. And then maybe Ravenous Hunter in there for some extra sustain. So I'm not really sure about all of her stuff and exactly what she'll get. It could be a phase rush type of situation if you really want the movement speed. I could also see potentially Conquer, because you would get a little bit of extra healing. You would get some extra AP. So I'm not exactly sure how we'll itemize, but I think it's going to be a Liandry's Rylai's type of package, similar to Singed, and you're just going to want to kite people out and get people to chase you and run around. So I think that she is going to be pretty good. So basically her passive, if you hit somebody with anything, it does 5% of their maximum health damage over 3 seconds. That is very good with Liandry's, because it'll reapply the Liandry's over 6 seconds. So if you hit them with something, they're going to be taking Liandry's burn for 6 seconds instead of 3 total, which is going to be really handy. And then the Blooming Blows, this is what you'll max first. This can help you wave clear really well, and as you can see, you can get up to 180 damage on a 4-second cooldown. But you got to remember that half of this is also true damage, so that's really a lot closer to 270. If you think of true damage as pretty much double damage, that's not exact math, but it's a lot with like a 1.2 ratio. So true damage is extremely strong. So I think that'll be a very good thing with her, and just that movement speed. It's going to be so hard to get away from her. And just to get out of her zone of control, especially if she's reapplying slows with Rylai's, it'll be tough. And she has a really big hit nuke here. If you hit somebody with this watch out eep where you basically dash at them and then auto attack them. So this is a really good combo with your swirl seed or with your either your swirl seed or your lilting lullaby. But it does a ton of damage. I mean, that number is so high. 400 base damage with a 90% 90% ratio is pretty huge. So she has some big ratios. I mean, this is on a 4-second cooldown with a 0.8. I think her numbers are just too high. They're going to have to nerf the movement speed or the damage because I feel like it's just too much. Either way, that's good. And then the swirl seed, you can throw this global potentially. Now, you probably find this like throwing up lanes or throwing down the river. And I don't know how fast this rolls. I haven't really watched a lot of footage of her. So we'll see. But it's okay. I imagine it'll probably be relatively easy to sidestep. But the thing is, even if you throw this point blank on somebody, it slows them for 3 seconds non-decaying, which is huge. That's a very, very long slow. Most slows are like 2 seconds decaying, which means you don't get the full value the whole time. But this is going to give you that full value the whole time. Now, granted, this is probably the last thing that you level. It's probably going to be Q, then W, then E, just because the cooldown doesn't change and the damage is kind of low compared to your other abilities. So it's pretty much always going to be a 25% slow, which is not the craziest in the world, but still, it's 3 seconds of 25%, which is pretty nice. And that can be a really good setup for a potential semi-global lilting lullaby. So if you, you're in the river doing scuttle or something, and you throw a lilting lullaby at them, and you manage to hit them from long range, you can put them to sleep. So this is kind of like a Zoe sleep thing, where it comes up after 1.5 seconds, it charges, and then they go to sleep for 2 to 3 seconds. And then they take a little bit of bonus damage coming out of it. So it's not that much damage compared to her other abilities. When you combine this with the fact this is going to trigger your passive to do the extra percentage, and then it's guaranteed to get this really big hit for the 390, and then it's likely you're going to be able to stick to him and keep hitting him with blooming blows, it's probably going to add up to be a pretty good chunk of damage. So she doesn't, I mean, in a team fight, I guess if you hit multiple people with blooming blows, then you might be able to trigger this on multiple people. The range, the radius is only 150, so it's unlikely you're going to hit multiple people with Swirl Seed. But overall, pretty good. So I think she's going to be an AP, like a squishy AP kiting type of champion, like a Singed. I mean, maybe somebody will come up with a tankier type of build of her, but I think she'll primarily be jungle. It's possible she could be played top lane. She does have kind of high base health and really high health regen of 0.9. Now, she only has 20 armor, so if you put her top against an AD champion, that's going to be pretty rough. But she could do pretty well. Her mana costs are pretty low on her Q spam. It does less damage to minions, I believe. Actually, it does the same damage to minions. Okay, what her Eep does less damage to minions. Okay, so you can't insta-clear the wave with Eep, but I guess you could spam Blooming Blows and do pretty good damage to minions. And then if you have Ravenous Hunter, I guess that would heal you up for a pretty good chunk as well. So we'll see. I think she will be pretty strong. I think primarily as jungle, but potentially as top lane. I don't think you'll likely see her anywhere else. She needs a lot of runtime because she needs to land multiple Qs. She's not going to be good at just really quick, like burst damage. I guess if you get enough AP, then hitting them with Swirl Seed into Watch Out Eep could be pretty high burst. I mean, 210 level 1 is pretty is pretty gross if you land it on people. So we'll see. But I think she will come out of the gate being pretty strong. Now, she is a newer champion, so on release, yeah, she's probably going to have like a 40 to 45% win rate. But I think people that are good on her can definitely make her work. And I think she could be fun. It's like, it's very similar, like I said, a cross between like Darius and Singed, or like maybe Irelia and Soul in terms of playstyle. Okay. Aphelios. Champion still too strong, especially in high-end pro play. If we look here, he still has an 86% win rate on the most recent patch with a 90% play rate. So yeah, way over the top. So his crescendum is 500 range, the sentry activation range. Okay, so the sentry only fires. Now it says activation range, not total range of fire, but I assume it can only fire for 500 range. So that'll be easier for range champions to play around, hopefully. Okay, so I didn't even realize that Runan's bolts actually applied flamethrower AoE damage as well, which seems really OP. I never even knew that about it. So it's fixing part of that. Critical AoE splash count is 6 now. If you crit somebody, Runan splash missiles are 3 instead of 4. Apparently you can splash, but they don't go through things. So I guess the bolts used to actually go through minions and all enemies and do extra damage. I don't know. This is going to lower the AoE, I guess, significantly, particularly on minion waves when you have Runans, but it still sounds like it's going to be strong. So it still looks like it'll apply the splash. It just doesn't go through minions. So still probably pretty good. Hurricane Splash missiles are now reduced by 100 range. Okay. I'm not sure the exact... I think it matches his range. So slight on the bolts, it's slightly less. So once again, this is going to make ranged champions a little bit better against him. So they're going to be able to outrange Crescendum and potentially outrange the Q Splash a little bit better. So things like Ashe, Varus, Senna, stuff with higher range. Caitlyn will be a little bit better against him. But that's not really lowering his team fight damage that much explicitly. The range... If he's versing a lot of ranged champions on the enemy team, then yes. But if it's, like a more standard 3 melee, at least, type of thing, if you have like a melee jungler, melee top, melee support, which is really common in pro, then he's still going to be hitting a lot of people. So, I don't know. I still think he's going to be really strong, but it's kind of hard to tell because I don't play him a lot. Just his quality of life, what this is going to do. But I still think he'll be a really strong ADC. Most of that's because a lot of other ADCs just aren't that great right now. And then we've got Caitlyn. Okay, 2 extra damage, movement speed by 330. And this is okay, but like the problem with Caitlyn is that she's just really hard for a lot of people to play, especially in lower elo. And it sounds like, well, no, she's got safety, she's got her net, she's got her trap, she's got long range. But the problem is you have to actually use her spells aggressively to get a lot of damage with her, and a lot of people just don't do that. Most people just sit there and farm in the lane. Maybe they'll add an extra auto attack every now and then, but they're not looking for opportunities to get really good aggressive traps and get those combos where you trap somebody and then auto attack net backwards, buffer a Q while you're going backwards and then auto attack them again. Like, that's the big combo, and a lot of Caitlyn just can't execute that, especially under Diamond. And so she is good if you have a lot of CC on your team. You put that trap under them. So if you have a Leona or a Nautilus or something like that trap follow-up damage is really high. Or a Morgana classically is another one where it's like a huge trap duration. But I still think it's not quite enough. I mean, one of Caitlyn's big problems is she just has this huge lull in the mid game because she doesn't have any attack speed steroids in her kit, and her base attack speed is really slow. So that means that she doesn't scale very well with Zeal items. So you really want rapid fire for the range on her, but the attack speed's not that good. So she's not that great with double Zeal. Usually like IE into IE rapid fire cannon. Blanket out on the name. The one that's AD and has the slow on it. It's also pretty good, but I don't know. Her itemization is just not that great in the meta right now, and she kind of falls off in the mid game compared to some of these other champs. And she just doesn't Stormrazor, there we go. And she just doesn't have the AoE damage, right? She doesn't have the utility, and she doesn't have the AoE damage. So like even after these nerfs on someone like Aphelios, he still does a lot of AoE damage, right? With his Infernum, he's got utility with his purple. He can root people. His Moonlight Vigil does AoE, so she just does way more AoE, or he does way more AoE damage than Caitlyn. Even Ashe, really, when she has Hurricane and she's got her W, she can start fights with her R. It just feels like other champs just do a bit more than she does. So it's okay. This will help out high-end Caitlyn's, but I really don't think that's what she's missing. The 5 movement speed is pretty nice. So like if you're a very heavy early game pressure comp, maybe with Karma or just something else that's going to be really aggressive with the poke early on, maybe Caitlyn works. But I still feel like she's just too skill intensive for a lot of people under Diamond, which once again is weird. People think she's a very simple champ because she has a long range, but you have to be aggressive. You're on the clock. You cannot just chill and scale. She is very good at like 4 items. When she gets a lot of crit, and she starts like 2-shotting people from a distance, yes, she's very strong, but it's like that mid game where you just don't have the utility around, like, you know, the second and third item is where she has that problem. Between like the 15 to 25 minute mark, she kind of falls off. But anyways, so it's nice. I don't think it's going to shake it up too much. It'll help her out a bit. Ashe is considered a hard counter to Caitlyn too, because you have a similar range, a little bit less, but then you also have the Ashe arrow, and Caitlyn can't dodge that arrow very easily, and she'll get blown up. So that's kind of rough, because Ashe is one of the most popular and successful ADCs in solo queue right now. Okay, Bountiful Harvest reduced to 15% against minions. Okay, so they're trying to stop tank Fiddlesticks, especially top lane and mid lane, and they say that right there. And it's an annoying build for sure. I haven't seen it winning that much in solo queue, honestly. It's just one of those things where people just don't like to play against it, I think. You know, it's 52% with it's got a high ban rate, but a low play rate. I mean, it's up there. You know, it's one of the higher win rates top, and it's a frustrating playstyle to go against. Just anything that can heal off of minions passively in the lane is usually a no-no in solo queue. If it has, especially AoE healing off of a wave, they almost always end up taking that off. So you look at like Akali's Shurikens, you look at Aatrox used to be able to heal way more off the minions. Look at Kai'Sa used to be able to heal off of Death's Dance and her Q really well in minions. It's just almost always a really toxic playstyle, because then you can just hard push and not interact with the enemy and just kind of passively win the lane. So it's probably a good move, even though I don't think it's like too oppressive. It is something that's probably annoying enough to ding it a little bit. So whatever, that's fine. Jungle Fiddle shouldn't really be affected by this that much. Okay, Gragas. Drunken Rage probably doesn't matter that much, the AP ratio. That will help your all-in burst combo a little bit. Explosive Cast getting 0.1 is a bit more interesting. It's going up to 0.8. Now, I'll be honest with you, I'm not really sure why Gragas falls in and out of the meta. I know he does hard counter some mobility champs that really want to engage. So, like, specifically things like Jarvan. He can hard counter that when Jarvan tries to flag and drag. He can belly flop that. He can belly flop like Zac going in. So there are certain champs, or like Lee Sin. I think he's got a pretty good matchup against Lee Sin. So he does have some anti-mobility. And he's a very good combination in pro with Yasuo, because it's almost like a point-click, easy knock-up. So he is kind of high skill cap, but I really don't know why he fell out of the meta. Maybe there are certain things that counter him fairly well in the meta. So he does build AP fairly often. But yeah, in solo queue, he's so low. He's like 46%. And I think even in pro right now, yeah, just no one picked him in the last patch of competitive games. So I don't know. I guess they're trying to bring him back in. He does have some interesting playstyles. You know, people can flash the ult. It can lead to some very cool, like, interesting plays. You know, giving someone the alley-oop for the dunk off of your ult. Like, he's a cool champion. He's fun. He's interesting. I don't mind giving him a little bit of a buff. I don't think it's going to help him that much, but it'll be... it's fine. I like it. Just giving a little nudge to interesting champions. I'm always in favor of that. Okay, Irelia. So this looks fairly significant. Okay, it's just at later levels. So this is going to make her scale a lot harder, but the level 1 doesn't matter. When do these... Okay, it checks at level 7. So at level 7, you're going to be able to get effectively 10% more. Level 13, you're getting 20% more attack speed. And common Irelia builds have been... let me pull up u.gg real quick. I don't want this video to be too long, but aim for about 30 minutes and just give you some actual insight on some of these things instead of just going over, just reading it to you. I always try to give you like a breakdown of how I think it's going to get into the meta, and just having some good data on that, some percentages, looking at some builds and things like that, I think helps out. So that's why I like to do this kind of double window screen here. Okay, so she's 52% in like high elo right now, challenger. So the fact that she's getting Blade of the Ruined King a lot earlier now, so she's doing Blade first, it looks like. Nobody's doing Trinity Force on her anymore, and then I guess it's like Blade Cleaver a lot of times. Some people still do Trinity, so it's kind of up in the air, the second item, but it's almost always Blade of the Ruined King first, then either Cleaver, Death's Dance, or something else, Sterix. I think that makes attack speed a lot more valuable, because, you know, every time you auto attack, Blade of the Ruined King's going to be doing even more. So I think that's pretty good, and you can stack this up obviously super fast off of minions. when you last hit minions. So I think it's pretty good. Level 7, 10% more attack speed. You know, it's about 250 gold extra value. So she's pretty good. High skill cap champ. I think she's an interesting champ. I like for her to be in the meta overall. It's hard to make it to where she's not oppressive because she has so much in her kit that she can do. But she wasn't picked at all, or at least not so far on the most recent patch. So now there's only been, 37 games on the most recent patch. Thereabouts, 37, 38. It's only 1 week of games, but I don't think she was played that much on 10-13 either. If we look at that. So yeah, that's fine. Once again, cool champion, interesting play style, decent counterplay to her. I think at this point in her life cycle, very low win rate in solo queue. You know, just a really high elo champion, fun to watch, interesting interactions. So I'm okay with that. I'd much rather something like Irelia be a little on the strong side than like Garen or Darius, you know, or these other just kind of just champions that are too consistent, have too much damage, especially at low elo. So I'm okay with that. Now, this is the opposite of something that I'm okay with. They're nerfing Lee Sin's safeguard to 14 seconds. So they're lowering his mobility, and that's one of the cooler aspects of his kit. I secretly want there to be like a support Lee Sin build too, and W would be a cornerstone of that build. I wish they would at least do, if they want to do 14 seconds, at least lower it by 1 second per point that you put into it to give him a bit more utility later on in the game. He's such a cool champion. He's one of the best designed champions in League. I think people like watching Lee Sin. He's probably one of the most popular champs to watch. If you could find data on most watched highlight reels, Lee Sin has to be up there. He's one of the most fun champs to play. One of the most fun champs to watch. I know pros love playing him a lot. He's risky. You know, he falls off late game. If you don't get ahead early, you can make flashy plays with him. There's high skill expression on his end. There's lots of counterplay on the enemy's end. I mean, he's just the perfect champ. Like, literally, I think if you polled 100 players and asked the best design champion in League of Legends, go, I'll guarantee you probably at least a third of them or more would probably vote on Lee Sin. He would be on the short list of top 3 champs that people would mention. Thresh is up there too. Lee Sin. There's a couple others, but Lee is definitely one of the best champs from all perspectives of the game. Viewership, fun to play, interesting to play against, risky, can be strong, but can fall off. There's lots of chances to screw him up. So I think he's just the definition of something that you want in the meta. Lots of people love him from a financial aspect. You know, he probably is one of the most popular champs that people play, and also that people sell skins for. There's a lot of skin lines. He's got kind of the weeb factor to him. I don't think that's a derogatory term necessarily, but, you know, he's got that, that East Asian theme. People love that stuff in the League community. So let me just see pick rates here. Yeah, I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, he's the 5th most picked champion with a 48% win rate. I mean, obviously they're doing it for pro. Yes, he does have a good win rate in pro right now, right? Like, he's got a 57% win rate. But I don't know. Volibear's often, well, I guess Volibear has a lower win rate. I don't know. I just hate to see him get nerfed in that way. If anything, I wish they would tone down his damage early and make his utility better late to kind of flatten the curve. So that if you take off early, maybe you don't completely snowball the game, but you can still do stuff later on, even if you're behind. I like to see that flattening of the curve rather than doubling down on the snowball. But anyways, okay, fine. I'm not sure how much that's going to affect him, because once you get 40% CDR, you might be able to do this multiple times in a fight. But I feel like a lot of times, especially early on, you're just going to be safeguarding once, either usually to close the gap, to be more likely to hit your Q, or to do like an inset kick backwards. So in a lot of interactions, it's not going to matter because he's only going to W once anyways, whether it's 12 seconds or 14 seconds. But in really long extended fights, it might matter that you don't have that extra shield. So I don't know. I don't like to see it, but that's how it is. Okay, Ornn. Base stats are down 3 armor. Okay, that's fine. He's not that great in solo queue. He's really good later on, and what makes him good is the scaling and giving the thousands of free gold to your team. So that's intact, and in the lane, he can just build a cloth armor out early without having to back, so he already has really preferable back timings. So that's probably fine. I mean, once again, I don't feel like he's a huge problem in pro. got a 49% win rate, so I don't know why they're singling him out. He only had a 52% presence on 10-13. And I mean, they've outlined what their criteria are, and what they're looking for to nerf something in pro is 80% presence is the main thing. I don't even know if they look at win rates. That's probably part of it, but you know what they said is they want something to be 80% presence over the last 2 patches, and he's 58%. So I really don't understand the Ornn nerf at all. It doesn't make any sense by their own criteria that they've published. It's not even close. It's not like he's 70%, and they're like, well, he's not 80%, but he's still problematic. And once again, he's a cool champ. You know, I think, yes, he does give a lot of free power, but I think if they wanted to nerf him, they should nerf the free power at the end, nerf the value on his ornaments, as LS likes to call them. Last Shadow, content creator, interesting guy, go check him out. But, yeah, I mean, and the thing that makes him cool is, once again, kind of like these other champs, is there's a lot of opportunities to outplay him, right? He has to headbutt into walls or his pillar. You can dash or flash that. His ultimate can basically be interrupted. If you CC him before he can headbutt his ult, then he can't use the headbutt and he doesn't get the knockup. You can straight dodge the knockup if you want to. So I feel like there's a lot of counterplay to him later on. So I don't think he's as interesting as Lee Sin or, Irelia in terms of his kit. But I still think he's cool. I think he's better than a lot of the other options in the top lane right now from just a gameplay perspective. So, anyways, hate to see it, but he'll probably still be viable. All right, Rakan. 40 to... reduced by 3 every 2 levels, reduced by 1.5 every level. Okay, so they're just smoothing it out so you get your passive more often. So like on odd levels, you're going to get a little bit of value out of him. It's probably not going to matter. I love Rakan. He's one of my favorite supports. I do think he is potentially on the weaker side compared to where he has been in the past in the current meta. Yeah, I don't even know if he got picked once in pro. I still like him a lot. I think he has a lot of potential, but I wouldn't mind seeing a little buff to Rakan. Maybe a little 10 buff to his shield or something like that. But anyways, that's not going to matter too much. Okay, Shen. 20 extra shield early on is a pretty big deal. I don't think Shen has any presence in pro right now. No. 0 presence on the most recent patch. Now, Shen is someone that pro players really do like to play because you can play around his ult really well, and he plays off of engaged champs. So classically stuff like Rengar, Nocturne, Zac, stuff that can really easily get on the back line. He can play Galio is another classic one that he's pretty good with. Galio is not that strong. A lot of people are saying he's OP in solo queue. He's really not seeing a lot of pro play, I don't think, right now. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Let me see. Yeah, not really. A little bit. So it's like a lot of these champs that are popular right now aren't going to be that great with Shen. I guess TF could ult onto the back line and Hourglass or something, but that seems a little convoluted. I don't know. He's okay. This will definitely help him trade in the top lane a lot more. So it's fine. It's cool. I mean, Shen is an interesting... I know that Sammy really loves Shen on the channel. So Shen is interesting. I mean, maybe bot lane... I personally think he has kind of poor matchups into enchanters. At lower elo brackets, ironically enough, I think he's better in support because people aren't going to dodge his taunt and they're not going to respect his damage early game as much. I think it gets a little bit harder in higher elo brackets where people can just outplay his taunt more often. So I don't know. We'll see. I like it. I mean, he's a cool champ. Good anti-auto attack champ. Good at taking down some of the melee top laners. So, sure. He's cool. Skarner. Now, Skarner and Swain are getting like little mini reworks here. So there's like a ton of changes going on. So let's just go through them real quick and see. I think so. Basically, what they're doing with Skarner, from what I glean here, is that they are flattening the attack damage at all ranks. So they're basically saying you don't have to build attack damage, i.e. you don't need to get Trinity Force to do decent damage now. You can build tank items and do a little bit more damage. So If you have, and it's total attack damage including your base. Whereas before it scaled pretty decently with attack damage, so it incentivized attack damage. But now it does a flat percentage of the target's maximum health, which is presumably magic damage. And then down here, it's 15% of total attack damage again, and then it's the same thing. It's just double damage. And the buff duration is 5 seconds now. The mana cost is up there. That's actually pretty significant. You spam this a lot in the jungle. And going to 15 at all ranks, that's a 2/3 increase in mana cost on your first clear. Maybe that doesn't matter if you have blue buff. That could weigh pretty heavily, potentially, in your first couple of clears. I'm not 100% about that. Or you could at least be like much lower on mana by the time you go gank. So I don't know. Now, at level 3, so if you have 100 AD in the early game, you probably have less than that, but just for easy math, if you have 100 AD and they have, we'll just say 800 health, then the previous one would have done 33 damage, basically, and now it's going to do 15 plus 16, so 2% of 800. 15 plus 16 would be 31. So, what was this? This was 39. So I guess it used to do 39 damage, then it's going to do 31. And then, so it's an 8-point differential in that scenario. Now, if you have less AD, let's say that you have, it's going to be harder mathematically, but say that you have like 80 total attack damage instead of 100. And this would be 12 damage here for 15% total attack damage. So it'd be 12. So 1/3 of 80 is what, like 27 would be 81. So it'd be 27 damage versus 12 plus 16 be 28, 27, 28. Okay, so that's a little bit more. So, like, if you have a moderate amount of attack damage, so like 80, if you're not building any AD, and they have like 800 health, I guess it's about the same. I don't know. It feels like, okay, so late game, especially against tanks, this is going to be more because you're not going to be building a lot of AD. So it's more later on in the game, early on in the game. It sounds like it's about a wash. It's about the same. But it does empower you to just go for more tank stuff. So now you can get Cinder Hulk and then maybe something like a Dead Man's Plate just to try to get on people a little bit faster, or you know, something like Iceborne Gauntlet or something like that instead of Trinity Force if you want a faster power spike. So I don't know. It does open up some options, but is this gonna matter? Is this gonna bring him back in? I don't think so. I mean, maybe this clears blue buff and red buff, and maybe like Dragon because it's maximum health, and it doesn't seem to have a cap on it. I'm sure it probably does have a cap, but it depends on how much this affects his clear. If this is fast enough for him to power clear the jungle at a much faster rate and get to 6 and then clear and have more gank time. I don't play Skarner, and I don't play against Skarner that much, so I'm not really 100% sure like what's up with this, but it's probably a faster clear time. It's just like, is it fast enough? I mean, Skarner's big problem is he's kind of a level 6 jungler that can't duel people as easily early on, and he just has to run at people, and he's so dependent on getting close for his ult, and he's so like ult dependent to do anything. I don't know. Maybe he gets a couple of percentage points on this. I don't think it's a big deal. Now, the E fracture not slowing down when it hits enemies is going to make it a lot more likely that you can CC people in team fights a lot more often. I mean, maybe he could be played as support with this a little bit more. I did play him extremely briefly in like the winter of 2017 as sort of anti-assassin. That was before Malzahar support. That was before Rakan. I mean, maybe you could make plays off of this if you max your E. I'll have to think about that. So check back in for the support tier list. So if you max E now, it is kind of a long duration. Does it do full damage to minions? Because I'm thinking, like, how this is 55 mana. I'm thinking, like, what if you just wave clear with this early on? I mean, it's only 40 magic damage, though. You do bonus physical damage when you attack somebody and it stuns them for 1.25 seconds. So if you just, like, eat the wave and then just, like, auto attack 2 or 3 of the minions, you would get this down to, like, 8 seconds or something. Maybe 10 seconds early on. Is that worth it? I mean, you could hit people also, like, through the... Like, you could fire this through the minion wave if it doesn't slow down and potentially just fish for hits on the enemy ADC. It does slow them for 2.5 seconds, non-decaying, so a 30-second slow could be a decent opportunity to run up and engage on them. I mean, you could, if you do hit them with that, you could use your W to run up and start fighting. W scales so poorly, though. I don't know. Probably not. I mean, maybe as an anti-tank, I'd have to think about it. Maybe as an anti-tank or something against, like, Nautilus or Leona. Because, I mean, these are 2 different stuns, right? You've got Fracture, which is a potential AoE stun. Also has decent wave clear applications. You have your ult, which is a point-click suppression, which means Cleanse doesn't get people out of this. McHale's doesn't get people out of this. They have to have Quicksilver Sash. 1.75 suppression. Does this disable items? Surely it does, right? Ends immediately. Target becomes untargetable. Blah, blah, blah. Spell shield, no. This move applies move block to the target if they are not close to Skarner, forcing them to move towards him. Okay, so stuff keeps happening even if you latch onto people that are unstoppable. So my question is, like, could you grab them and then pop, like, a Shirelius or something and run away? Or just, like, pop, I mean, what if you trigger Phase Rush? Right? Like, what if you hit them with an E, you walk up, you auto-attack them, Q them, impale them, and your Phase Rush? Can you run away with that? I mean, that could be interesting. Maybe Phase Rush on him? I don't know. It sounds pretty gimmicky. But I don't know. Maybe in the jungle, people are discovering Phase Rush on Nunu. I mean, maybe you could run Phase Rush on him, and then you just Phase Rush. You're, like, super fast, and you just run out of there, you know, whenever you hit him. I mean, you could even smite him as well if you're a jungler with Nimbus Cloaked. Proc Phase Rush, smite him, and then ult him and just run, you know, like 1,000 yards backward with him. I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting. He has an interesting playstyle, so I like it, moving him up. I'm not sure. I mean, maybe this does make him good. It's this thing right here. The full movement speed on the E, I think that is the biggest deal. This right here feels like kind of a wash, a little bit better for tank. But we'll see. We'll see. I'll have to try it out. I'll think about it. But it's definitely a little bit better as jungler. Maybe support. Maybe support. It's kind of a long shot. But maybe against other melee supports, or like really slippery champions like Vayne or something, maybe the ult is pretty good. Or like against assassins, how I used to use him before, you know, Talon's running at your 80 carry, you just impale him. And the thing is, it's so hard for them to outplay this, right? You just grab them. And that was the thing, is that was in a meta when I used it, when people were playing Kha'Zix, Rengar, Talon, a lot of stuff like that. Just being able to point click, grab them. There's no way they dodge it, and it's instant. Because sometimes like Nautilus's R is too slow if it's a really fed champion running at you, or they can flash your hook or whatever to try to get away. So I don't know. It's interesting. We'll have to check it out. Okay, Swain. Now this one is a lot more going on here. We've got Ravenous Flock, 10 seconds, scales of cooldown reduction. Okay. The base movement speed, this is terrible. 10 movement speed is huge nerf, like astronomical. If nothing else is giving him movement speed, which it doesn't look like it is, that is a massive nerf, especially on a champion that needs to stay close. Like, he does damage over time by standing close to people. So if they dash away, he has no way to get back on him, and he doesn't have a lot of gap closers. I mean, maybe you could run like Protobelt or something on him, but I don't think you want to do that. I'm not 100%. And maybe Rylai's to stick to him better. I don't know. That just feels really bad, though. Really, really bad. So the cooldown is now 10 seconds and scales with cooldown reduction for Ravenous Flock. And I don't... So his Flock is... I'm trying to remember. It's been a long time since I played Swain. Periodically target... Okay, so he can rip a Soul Fragment out, does extra damage, pulls them towards him. Harvest after 1 second. Okay, so it heals him for a decent amount. And each Soul Fragment increases his HP by 5 and restores mana. Soul Fragment, Soul Fragment. Does his ult still... Okay, his ult doesn't scale off of Soul Fragments. Becoming ghosted and gaining bonus health. And doubling the health gain from Soul Fragments. Okay, so you gain a little bit. So it does scale some with Soul Fragments. They've changed him several times over the years. Okay, so passive is a big deal. So now it's 10, but it scales with CDR. Okay, there's 10 at all ranks. I really hate these kind of changes that are like, we don't really know what we want to do with this champion, so let's just change a bunch of stuff. Like, it just doesn't seem to have a clear vision. Do you want him to be like a tank, you know, like an AP tanky type of champ with like Rod of the Ages, Rylai's, Leandri's, that type of stuff? Do you want him to be a burst champion with Electrocute where you grab him with the E and blow him up? It just doesn't seem like this is clarifying his identity too much, which is why a lot of people don't play him, because he's just kind of a mixture of all these different traits. So like early on, this is good. What levels? So level, 1 to 6, this is a buff. At level 7, this is probably a wash. If you have 10% CDR, it's going to go from 10 down to 9. And then at level 13, this is likely a nerf with his probable items. Because, a lot of his items don't have CDR, right? If you're getting Rod of the Ages, no CDR. Leandri's no CDR. Rylai's no CDR. So he doesn't get a lot of CDR in his kit. I mean, you could do something like Luden's, but that just feels bad on him, I think. I mean, maybe that changes, but it just seems weird. Like, why? I mean, I guess it gives him a little bit more power earlier, so, alright. Okay, the Ravens no longer restore mana? What? Jeez. Okay, so he's going to have some better health regen. His mana is really going to hurt. That's bad. That's real. Like, these two are really bad news bears, I think, for Swain. That is brutal. Not even nerfing the mana, just straight up taking it away. I mean, what's his... No one plays this champion, right? Like a 2% play rate, 50% win rate. Like, why? Why is it this dramatic? I mean, he's interesting that he's like an AP sort of tank type of champion. There aren't a lot of champs that are like that in the game. There are some. The Leandri's, Rylai's type of builders. Your Singe, your Aurelian Soul. To a lesser extent, maybe like Rumble. But, so I like it as I like the class of champion, Vlad. But, I don't like the direction here. Okay, so this is going to 3 seconds, so 1 second at all ranks. Okay. The bolt angle is 8 degrees, so that's like 20% less sort of hitbox on it. It can pass through champions, but not minions. So if you're in an AoE teamfight situation, if they have a lot of melee stacked up, that will do a lot of extra damage. I guess it is 725. It says the radius. I assume that's the length of it. That is pretty far. So, I mean, I guess there's a decent chance you could hit multiple people in team fights. Maybe that's a lot stronger than I'm thinking of. So, like, if they have a lot of melee champs now and you can spam this Q and hit a lot of people with it, like if you're hitting 3 people, if they have triple melee like we were talking about before, like jungler, top lane, or support, almost all of those roles are melee. So in like a 5-on-5 team fight, maybe this Q's hand does a lot more damage. Now that's only if they are like stacked on each other and blocking, because before if they were all spread out in a line, this would hit all of them anyways with the Q. This is only if one of them is blocking for another one. So that is pretty nice. Bolt angle, okay, and you can, cast a lot more of them. So it is a lot more spammable. Okay, I mean, that's good. So the degree is less, so if they have to be bunched up more, but that's definitely a buff. Vision of Empire, much longer range. I mean, you only get 1 point in this typically early on, I think. Yeah, I believe you go for Never Move second. It's possible you could max this first. I think you max Never Move second. Okay, so 5,500 range. So you can throw this from bot lane into mid lane, no problem. Mana cost is the same at early ranks, a little bit less later on. The damage is way lower. It's 20% lower damage. I guess you can just kind of fish for stuff. I mean, you can use this in the jungle. What's the cooldown on it? It's pretty long. 22 seconds. I guess it's not that long. But now you can, like, almost like an Ash Arrow, you can use this in the jungle just to scout jungle timings if you know pathing. So you can see, okay, you know, their Grom's about to spawn. I think they might be here. So you can use this to, like, check bushes or even check jungle camps now. If you want to. I guess you can try to go for cheeky snipes on jungle camps if you have it warded. Probably not happening, but maybe. So I guess this just gives you more scouting range, and like potentially you can chip this in, maybe mid laner in the jungle, just throw that over there at longer range to try to make a play on it. Just see if you can get an assist middle or something. So okay, I don't think it's going to be a huge deal. People are going to make a big deal out of it. Oh my god, up to 2,000 more range, but it is nice for a scouting tool, I guess. I don't think, especially at most levels of play, it's going to matter. People aren't going to follow and track junglers until you start to get to Diamond Plus and use this effectively and communicate that information, but fine. Okay, so cooldown 10 seconds at all ranks, and it costs 50 at all ranks. Okay. So you can fish for hooks a lot more in the early game. You can use the Q to push, maybe. I don't know. The 50 extra mana is interesting. 10-second cooldown. I guess you can fish for hooks quite a bit more. I mean, at max rank, so like at level 13, when you max this out, it'd be 1 second longer cooldown, but that doesn't matter too much. You're saving a lot of mana doing that. Okay, so you're losing a lot of mana off of not having Ravenous Flock, but I guess if you're fishing for mana, you're still only going to have 1 point of this, levels 1 to 5, if you're maxing Q, so it'll save you, 10 mana every time you use it, or, yeah. So I still think that's going to be net negative on the mana, but does any of this help him in the jungle? I don't think so. Maybe. So I don't know. I think support Swain would probably like this the most, just because he doesn't spam the Q as much, so the mana doesn't matter as much, and Never Move is probably a lot more important to support, fishing for those hooks. I don't think this is necessarily going to bring him back into the meta though. So these are all like interesting. I still feel like the movement speed loss and the mana restore is a very big deal in the early game, so he's going to be a lot weaker in the early game, but then lower cooldown and passing through champions will make him a lot better in 5v5s. I just, why do this? Why nerf the movement speed? Just give him a buff. It's fine. Just this. I mean, just nerfing the mana and increasing this stuff would have been fine. So I don't know why the 10 movement speed nerf, but I don't know. It's okay. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal, but it's interesting. Okay, Thresh. I don't like them nerfing Thresh, and we're about running out of time here, so we'll go through this a little bit faster. But I don't like it just because, once again, he's a high skill cap champ, which is very interesting, and I don't think he has a high win rate a high win rate like Lee Sin, right? Like Lee Sin had like 57% win rate, so it's like, okay, he's close to their... well, actually, on 10-14, he didn't. On 10-14, he's only got a 43% win rate. Now, he has played 70... he does have 79% presence, but there's also Volibear, who has a 97% presence, if they're looking at presence right now, as a criteria for nerfing. And in the previous patch, he had 91% presence, but he only had 64% presence in 10.3 and a 57% win rate, so... I'm still not totally sold that he needed to be nerfed like the Lee. But anyways, Thresh on the other hand, 48% win rate, 62% presence in 10-13. And then, I mean, on this patch, he does have 82% win rate with 61% presence. So, I mean, like, that's good, but is it, like, so good that you gotta nerf him? I mean, it's literally just one patch where he's been popular. They probably didn't even use this data when they were making this decision. They're probably using the 10-13 data. And it's like, okay. I mean, I guess he does have the highest presence of all supports. Looks like Nautilus is more dangerous, though. Nautilus got a 55% win rate with similar presence. I don't know. Fine. You know, this isn't his main thing. It's Dark Passage. Typically, you do max Dark Passage second, I believe, on Thresh. You can max E second, I believe, but I still don't like. I don't like it. I mean, Thresh is kind of like Lee Sin. I think there's a lot of counterplay to his kit. I think he's fun to watch. I think he's fun to play. It's one of the most interesting supports out there. I don't like it, but whatever. Okay, pick a card. Going to 8 seconds early on, scaling down to 6. Okay. Typically, you max this seconds. This is a pretty big deal because every time you use your card, now they're going to have 2 more seconds to contest you. So, fine. I mean, he is pretty oppressive right now. He does have a very high representation, and I think a pretty high win rate in pro. I mean, 72% representation, presence with 59% win rate, and then 10-14, 90% presence with a 75% win rate. So, yeah, I mean, you probably need to do something about him. This just adds extra windows of vulnerability. So he still does the same damage. He still has the same global cooldown. Unsealed Spellbook is getting nerfed here in just a second. Spoiler alert. So that's another knock to him. But he's okay. He's just a very consistent champion. Just a point-click, 2-second stun with his card. Usually you get at least 3 points in your Q and lane to wave clear, I believe. And then you max W after that. I mean, maybe you max W earlier now. I'm not sure. I think you have to have at least 3 points in Q in the laning phase so that you can push waves properly. I'm not a TF expert, but I believe it's probably 3 Q in lane and then max W by level 10. So this will affect his mid game. It might just be straight max Q first and then max W, but I feel like getting that longer stun in the mid game for the team fights and stuff is better. So it's probably 3 points in Q, 1 to 5, and then from 7 to 10 is max W. Okay, that's fine. All right, Yuumi, very, very problematic champion. I still think that she's really strong right now in the right hands. It's just like if the team with Yuumi gets ahead, it's just so difficult to deal with them because she just can't be killed. And she just adds a lot of movement speed, just everything. She's got a huge AoE ultimate, movement speed, heal, attack speed. She just brings so much to the table, gives extra flat AD, so she can just function in so many different game states, right? Like she can attach to your Darius and play around him, or your Garen if they're really far ahead. She can attach and play around your ADC. She can attach and play around your jungler. There's just so many different situations where she's strong. I still think she's just so good. I mean, I know her win rate is not stellar, and I know Jolty's going to be like, but her win rate's like 45% or something. Jolty has a love-hate relationship with Yuumi, but I still think for high skill levels of play, especially in the best-case scenarios where, like, the team's really far ahead, I just think that it's too hard to come back from her. I just don't think there's enough counterplay to her in her kit, because you can't kill her. She brings guaranteed power. I mean, the thing about most enchanters, and I did a whole video about this with enchanter itemization, is that they bring a lot of really high consistency power because their items are just so strong. Like Ardent Censer and Athene's Unholy Grail are like 200% efficiency. And this is traditionally balanced out on enchanters by the fact that they're squishy and vulnerable. Like a lot of times they don't have great escapes. They have, low base stats. So if you engage on them with a Nautilus or a Leona, something like that, or you flank them with a Kha'Zix, like you probably kill them. Right? So that's what they're balanced around. It's like, okay, they're really strong. they're ranged, but if you do get a hold of them, you can kill them. And Yuumi kind of breaks that paradigm, and that's what's so difficult to balance around her, is she brings that consistency with itemization. She can get the Ardent Censer, she can get the Athenes, but it takes away that weakness where you can't pick her off. You have to kill someone else instead of her. And not only that, you have to kill, like, in a team fight, you have to kill everybody, because she can just jump around basically freely to everybody else. So it's just so difficult to kill her. And on top of that, she just has really good base kit in addition to the items, because she gives the attack speed, she gives the movement speed, she has a huge AoE CC, and she gives out like a lot of flat extra stats, a lot of either AP or AD adaptive. So she just has like 4 different things that all scale really well as a support, and she works with the best items, and she removes the biggest weakness of that class of champion, Enchanter. So she's just very, very difficult to deal with. So Bop and Block is now giving 8% of your maximum mana on Restore instead of just 50 to 160. Now it's 25. Okay, so if you have like 400 mana early, 8% of that is like 50. So that's like 75 mana in the early game. I don't remember how much she starts off with, but it's close to that. And then it's a percentage of your maximum mana. You're still getting Presence of Mind. You're still getting Mana Flow Band, so you're gonna have a lot of max mana. So, and then the cooldown's also lower. I would not buff her. I wouldn't do it. I think she's already good. I mean, I know the nerfs seemed extreme. Every time they nerf her, it seems extreme. Like, oh my god, you know, her E costs all this extra mana. Doesn't matter. Like in team fights, she's still getting resets from Presence of Mind. As long as you're not spamming your E to run around the map and chase people down, like she's worse in those situations. She's worse in poke situations. I think that was healthy. At least there's some counterplay. You can run her out of mana, maybe. But now in team fights, you know, whenever she gets kills or assists, she's going to get that Presence of Mind proc to get the extra, whatever it is, 10%, 20% of your mana back. I don't remember exactly. I think it's 20% of your mana back, and then each E costs 15%. So, I don't know. Fine. You better ban her. If you better ban her. I think that she's just a huge problem still. Okay. Not to say, like, she can lose. Like, she's going to have a low win rate. I don't think that her win rate's going to go through the roof. She might go to 48 or 49% win rate off of this. But once again, if you're good on her in the best case scenarios, then she's just too oppressive. The reason, how can you not be good on her? People think she's an easy, like, face roll champ, but she's not, because, like, you have to manage the situations. You can get baited. The number one thing is a lot of Yuumis get baited into bad fights. Right, they'll just run in, they'll stay attached to somebody who's tower diving, or they will stay attached to somebody who's running through the jungle with no vision, and they just, you know, get baited into these stupid decisions, and they die. Like, you're not getting away. If you make a dumb decision to go follow somebody into a bad situation, you're dead. Right? If everyone around you dies, you're dead. Versus someone like Janna or Lulu or Karma, they might be able to help out a little bit if someone's doing stupid things, but they're not going to be punished as much. They could still run away. But Yuumi can't do that, so you have to make smart decisions and know when to detach and run away, and I think a lot of Yuumis just don't do that properly, and that's why she has a lower win rate. So it's not that she's not good, it's just that a lot of people just don't play her well enough. Okay, the last couple of minutes, I don't want this to be over an hour. The Spell Thieves buffs, okay. I still think a lot of champs will want Relic Shield for that consistency, but if it's a champion that's super mana hungry early, like Yuumi or Sona, some of those types of champs, Nami, then maybe Spell Thieves makes a bit more sense. It still is going to be hard to transform Spell Thieves in the mid game because you have to actually walk up and hit people, but you are getting the extra 5 AP, and the extra 25% mana regen early is pretty relevant, so more champs are going to take this. But I don't think it's going to shake up the meta too much. It might help out some of those poke champs like the Sona just a little bit, but probably not a ton. And then Unsealed Spellbook. This is basically just a TF rune. Not a lot of other champions run this. It's just another nerf to TF. I think that kind of sucks because I think it's a cool rune in general. I think it's very interesting. It's just hard to pull off on a lot of champs just because a lot of champs can't leverage the versatility of this rune well enough to make up for just some of the raw stats you could get off of other runes like Airy or Comet or Guardian or whatever. It's just a lot more situational and requires just a lot more pre-planning and sort of knowledge of game states and macro and stuff like that to utilize properly. TF does it perfectly. He doesn't have another great rune that he uses instead, so it's great on TF, mediocre on most other champs. So it's just pretty much a nerf to TF. But anyways, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you very much. If you enjoyed this, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check out the rest of the content on the channel. We stream every night starting around 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'd love to have you. Very friendly, chill community. And I'll see you next time. Have a good day.